I'd like to welcome our second speaker, Dr. Paul Harper. Just move up there. Paul is going to talk about the impact of the Marrakesh Treaty on the print disabled in the Global South. So I'd like to start by just giving you a little bit of background of Dr. Harper. So he's a leading international disability rights legal academic, having held visiting positions at the National University of Ireland and Syracuse University in New York, where he is an international distinguished fellow. He is also the holder of a prestigious Fulbright Future Scholarship entitled Universally Designed for Whom? Disability, the Law, Practice of Expanding the Normal User. He has legal practice and teaching expertise in teaching and anti-discrimination law, human rights, labour laws, and work health and safety laws. He chairs the UQ Disability Inclusion Group, which supports the university in its implementation of the UQ Disability Action Plan. His recent monograph, Discrimination, Copyright and Equality, Opening the e-book for the Print Disabled, and analyses the interaction between anti-discrimination and copyright law. And one thing that really interested me was I encourage you to read his biography because it's amazing, but he's also been a professional athlete competing in the 2000 Sydney and 2004 Athens Paralympics, and in 2002 the Manchester and 2006 Melbourne Commonwealth Games. Welcome Dr. Paul Harper.
Well, after that very kind introduction, you're probably going to be disappointed. Okay, so, well, thank you, and I think that my presentation lines up pretty well with, because we're talking there about access and trying to find ways on the ground, and this is what I'm going to talk about today. So what I'm drawing from today is from a draft well, not a draft now, it's post-proof with a colleague of mine from Harvard, Michael Stein. It's going to be coming out in an edited collection by Michael Stein and Jonathan Lazar, which is, if you're reading it phonetically, it's laser, but he like Lazar. So that's looking at information communication technologies in the Global South. That's with OUP. So, about 21 years ago, say 8 months, I was about a couple hundred metres downriver from here at the law building. Now, I stood there thinking, bloody hell, how am I going to get these damn books? I was an undergrad law student, and I was sitting there going, I don't have access to these books. Now, I don't have access to the internet because it didn't really exist as much back then. I was trying to really work out, how do I get access? Now, what was happening? Well, the wonderful people, they'd scan the books, you'd edit them. I used my family and friends to support me, and I used my credit card to help people help me as well. Now, it wasn't a very easy situation. It was easier for me than it was, say, Ron McCallum, who's a blind superstar from Sydney. But let's leap forward to now, 21 years later, when I'm a fat 40-year-old. You've got a very different situation. It's still not fantastic, but technology has made the impossible possible. We no longer have to rip the binding off books to scan them. There's a Google scanner. But we don't have to even do that. We can get books from the publishers. Or we can just go get ebooks. Now, many books are now born digital. And this point I usually pull my phone out, but I actually left it in a bag over there because I should detach from it sometimes. But, everyone who's got ebooks on their phone, how many ebooks? 1,000? 100,000? Well, a lot of them now are accessible if you use your iPhone. They turn VoiceOver on, pick it up and go, Siri, turn iPhone on, turns VoiceOver on. Siri's and it depends on your accent you've got on the voice and it talks. Many of those books are readable. Not all, some are. So this is fantastic. The thing is though, many ebooks, despite that, aren't published in a format that the print disabled can consume. So, if you think about a lawyer, an academic, a politician, anyone who's using content, you can't just say, well, Encyclopedia Britannica says, someone will say, volume, page, perhaps. And you go, I don't know, the ebook didn't say it. We can't state that, so you need to find the page number. So using it as a student or anyone, you need to know that. Well, a lot of that means you need someone to work on the book and do something to change it. Or what about descriptions? Anyone ever studied economics, accounting? Well, there's a lot of numbers and they do mean lots of things. If you understand them, it probably means you're earning a lot of money, But that's complicated. And let's not even think about medicine. How do you pick up ever seen a photo of a heart operation? Well, if you're a blind person, it just says graphic. And some of those pictures, I'm probably glad it just says graphic. But that's all you've got. So, if you wanted that, you'd have to have someone tag and you could say photo of operation. It doesn't. But if you actually want to understand what a Picasso painting looks like, I've had eyesight, so I can visualise it to some extent. But to get that would take a lot of description. So those books not accessible. You can't. And at the end, I'm going to flag how people are using artificial intelligence to do that, and that's exciting. And I'll talk about that at the end. But a lot of time it still is humans though. What I want to talk about today is a shift in copyright laws. And it's a big shift. Now, I'm going to bash a bit of copyright because when I was a student, copyright, I didn't have a very good view of it. Because I said, why can't I scan the book, copyright? Well, the guys in Sydney have a copy given to them by the publisher. Can I get a copy? No, copyright. Cameron, you're at ANU. Can I get a copy from you? No, not legally. And I'd say what really happened. Because of copyright. And I'm like, good copyright. And I've always recognised that you need to have value for, when you make something. But when I lost my eyesight at 14, and I wasn't an avid reader, but I wanted to read something, and you can't read that. Why? Well, it's not made in the format you can read. How easy is it to get in the format I can read? Well, you can get it from, was Vision Australia or whatever it was, and so when do I get that? Well, when it comes out, they'll read it onto tape. Well, I don't want to read the whole, Time Australia. It's, well, you don't get the whole Time Australia anyway. You only get a few key articles. Yeah, but I'm pretty obscure. I don't always want the key things, and that's too bad. So it wasn't a great system. And could I get access to it? No, copyright. Well, some of those people were wrong anyway because there was actually an exception in the Copyright Act which did enable things to get scanned and distributed, but it really was reducing, even though it wasn't the three-step test in practice. It was limiting. The norm was limiting. And it basically was, for me, a cultural apartheid. It wasn't any way of information apartheid even. There were people that would sit next to me in my classroom, they would have access, I'd wait 3 or 4 weeks. And that was, no question about it. Grades suffered, career prospects technically suffered, though I'm doing okay at the moment, you could say. But unfortunately, because I'm bitching about what was wrong, so it's given me good ammunition, so thank you. But in all seriousness, it was pretty drastic. Now, is it time to stop bashing copyright? Well, it is. And the reason I can is because we have a new norm. High five. It's actually a small time. It's the great work by the World Blind Union, advocates, and even the World Intellectual Property Organisation. Yes, WIPO, I can give them a plug now. It has changed. There's a new paradigm come out. It's not just about tolerating difference. Now there's actually a system in place to help enable access, wider access. Now they've been, I think, it's not been great for a long time, but back in the 1967, the Berne Convention, the three-step test was introduced. Now that enabled you to take material that wasn't not accessible and convert it. It was time-consuming and difficult, but hey, it was at least a window into the building, even though you could only get to the ground floor. At least you have something. It was better than nothing, and it made a big difference back then, and it still continues to make a big difference 52 years later. It's permitted a lot of accessible books and enabled me to study. Without it, I wouldn't, lawfully I wouldn't have been able to get most of my books. So diversity was tolerated. Now, many top academics have written on the Berne three-step test and even about the Marrakesh Treaty, which I'm about to talk about. Indeed, I'm not sure if Nick Sousa's here in the room. No, maybe not, but he's here at QUT. And I had the privilege of working with him, and he helped me understand copyright a bit more when I was doing a PhD, and we published a number of papers together. So, and the open access people here at QUT, Brian and those guys, really got me thinking this is something I should really do something about it. In fact, I wrote it was essentially just a bitch. And I didn't intend to publish it really, and I didn't get it anywhere. And then Brian said to me, "You should publish that." I said, "Oh, I don't know." I said, "Don't have you got copyright?" And Nick said, "Oh, I do." I said, "Let's do it together." And so we did, and that's history. And now we published, and so what I'm going to talk about now is the next phase. Like, we're from the Burn 3-step test to the Marrakesh phase. This is transforming here in Australia, and what I'm going to talk about is the Global South. We heard that in the previous speech. Not many editors in the Global South. Financially, they don't have the money to pay for editing, but of course they have the money to do the editing if you pay them. And that's the business model I'll be talking about in a few months, about how you can outsource things to the Global South to get edited, they hand it back, all digital, and it's an employment opportunity. Anyway, that's another discussion. So, Global South, realistically, not that many years ago, poor country, let's just, South Africa, Vanuatu. Not that poor if you've been to Vanuatu. I stayed in the resort, so it's nice, but not exactly poor, not like Ethiopia, where the African Union's based. So, but in Vanuatu, I can remember going across there to do research on the print disabled. And the law professor who was then I knew from here, who then at the time was the dean, said, "Oh mate, Paul, we don't have that. It's just," and he sort of sat down, gave me some truths that, we don't have any students getting to the university because the schooling system's a bit backward, not as advanced, not as well resourced. I still had a good holiday and ended up writing a different paper and published it. But no, I actually did. I really published a paper. I thought I really had to, because trying to tell the tax officer it really was my girlfriend was living in Vanuatu and I'm there for 2 weeks. It's really research, guys. It wasn't going to fly too easy. But with a published paper and ethics clearance, they were okay with it. They did actually ask the question. So anyway, the point was, back then there was 0 to no books. You would literally go into a place and they would have a few Jane Austens or out of copyright books, a few books given by the Braille Library in America, Australia. Very limited. In Bislama, nothing. And if you're in India, maybe nothing in Punjab. So look, very little. Now, do I talk about 10, 100, thousands? With HathiTrust, as I'll get to the end of this speech, potentially millions. So you've got to put that in perspective. We're talking very short time frame, people going from nothing, potentially nothing, to wow. It's still there's 200 million books in the world, so we're not there. But in terms of if my bank account would go like that, I'd be very happy. Put it that way. So how did we get to here? Well, in the lead up to the Marrakesh Treaty, which is WIPO Treaty, we had the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. That was paradigm shifting, came out and was adopted by the UN in late 2006. And what's that got to do with IP? Well, Article 30, sub 3. It says in there that state parties will take all appropriate steps in accordance with international law, so it's not trying to transform everything, but in accordance with their obligations, to ensure that laws that protect protect intellectual property rights do not constitute an unreasonable limitation on letting persons with print disabilities access, or people with disabilities access cultural materials. So critically, it says, copyright's important, IP is important, but if it stops people accessing cultural materials, that law has to change. So let's place a ceiling on intellectual property. Place a ceiling then on textbook access. Only in cultural materials. So you could say, well, I want to read a book for politics. Well, that's another article, so you're getting close. Maybe you're trying a new political career. Education, well, education's culture. And if you did an arts degree, it'd be hard. You probably could get everything. Law degree, probably a far cry to say someone will pick up a textbook in law and read it for fun. Some of us do, but we're just different. But I mean, it's so work, and even harder to say that I want to read the annotated civil procedure laws for culture. You can't stretch. So it's great, but limited. Okay, but that created a norm. It created a shift. It gave us something to run with, and we ran with it. Well, not we. I didn't. I was still thinking I wasn't actually running with the Nest way, but other people did. People that are much more important than I am. And we got to the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, itself shifted. And that's really a big deal. WIPO has been, for a very long time, it's looking at limiting access because its stakeholders make money from limiting access. In other words, I paid access to your book, thank you, read it. And so WIPO, what has it done? Well, the Marrakesh Treaty has a number of ways to enable people to share books, get books access internally, but the big thing for the Global South, the massive change. So most pertinently, the Marrakesh Treaty, Article 4, 5 and 6 together, require states to implement copyright reforms to enhance the capacity of persons with print disabilities, which doesn't include people with intellectual dyslexia, just by they defined it, to access books, and then to enable the cross-border sharing. So what I create in Australia, I can share with New Zealand. So that's a big deal. Well, big deal in New Zealand, they're not that poor, but have a better lie to you. Well, how many books can Australia scan? Well, and when I'll talk in a moment, sometimes, Australia and New Zealand, we've got money, but so what? Well, how about the US? Well, the US have an interesting approach to politics and governance, particularly under the current regime with international law. But I was dumbfounded, but the dream of reading equality took a massive leap forward when Donald Trump signed on something. So the United States Congress and Senate passed the Marrakesh Treaty Implementation Act. So in part of that, it amended. Now, it was signed by Trump, and when it got passed by the Senate, I just went, this hurts big business. It's Donald Trump. I don't have the strongest view of him. And I thought, he signed it. And I went, oh, okay, well, I still haven't changed my view on him, but I was very happy because that meant the Copyright Act in the US was amended. There was a new act, new section. Section 121 capital A was introduced, enabling the cross-border sharing of works. So, US law now lets you share works internationally. That's huge. The Marrakesh Treaty Implementation Act enables entities who have lawful copies in America to share them with authorised entities in other countries and directly to eligible people. Of course, you've got to make sure you're doing it right or you'll be sued, and therein lies a big risk. But it's manageable. And it is being managed. Now, it's a big deal because I mentioned towards the end you've got Bookshare and HathiTrust, but let's just say the US has millions of books in accessible format. And when I was a student here, I can remember I looked at enrolling just in one course in one of those little community colleges because they're quite cheap, because then I get access as a US student to all their resources. So that was the lens I was thinking of going to. I managed to get another way, which we won't talk about in case it's been recorded. But but I was looking at that because it would have enabled me to access it, even though I'm an Australian with a wealthy country. Resources over there are massive. Well, now they're my resources. It's well, not everyone, but a lot more. So, how's it working? Is this really happening? We've talked about law, and law, international law, even domestic law. Is it working? Well, Bookshare. You may have heard of Bookshare. Well, Bookshare is now sharing books internationally. It always has, but now it's actually doing it. And so it's a HathiTrust. And so is WIPO. That World Intellectual Property Organisation is facilitating access. It's helping this process. Not only has it kicked open the door, it's ushering people through it. So how's it doing this? Well, the Marrakesh Treaty Article 9 requires the WIPO to set up a website to help share books, so facilitate it. In a way, it looks just like they're being really lovely. The other side is they also they make sure there's control. So, there's also, it makes sense. If they help do it, then they control the process, they control the infrastructure, they control who's on it. It's actually a smart move as well as a very good move for us. So it's a win-win. So I'll talk a bit about this website. It's called the Accessible Book Consortium, or ABC, which is easy to remember, ABC WIPO. So what is it? It's run at this Accessible Book Consortium. It's run for and by WIPO, paid for by WIPO. And people join up, as in institutions, so they join up, then they sign a contract to share works with other members. One contract, not 1,000. If there's 1,000 members, you don't have to sign to share a book with another member. You sign your contract, one contract. So it's like it's a really big deal. You don't have to have 100 contracts, check access. And if you ever tried to pay someone internationally at a university, or just because you might have done that, you wouldn't share accessible books. But if you might have paid someone, fly them out, how many forms you have to fill out? Then there's a checklist that you've got all the forms, and they want the other person to fill it out. And I'm bringing it across the US professor, they charge per hour. So you want them to read 20 hours. Okay, well you pay. We had this argument, and they said, oh, well, who's going to pay? And I said, well, no, you want the forms filled out. That's going to cost $20. It's 20 hours. It's another $5,000. You're going to pay? No. Well, can I fill it out on their behalf? Oh, okay. But that argument, when I would get a book from overseas, I used to have, and these libraries used to have, with ABC, no more. One contract, one license agreement. So, how's this helping the Global South? We still haven't got to that much. Well, there's a lot of the major parties in the north are members of it, and on the south, heaps have joined. Most members of Marrakesh Treaty in the Global South, they see the benefit, huge numbers, and a lot of them have joined this ABC. And it allows the sharing of accessible works. Now, accessible works include Braille, which, if you've seen the Bible in Braille, it probably comes up to about my waist. Talking books, or digital books. Now, ebooks, the time I've spoken to you just in that one sentence, if I had my inbox in Send, I'd probably send 10, 20 books. Maybe if I had good connection and they're compressed, maybe 100. Cassette tapes take months to get around to Ethiopia, Sierra Leone. But internet, still pretty fast in those countries. Not like we have here. Mind you, we don't all have broadband anyway. But it's super fast. So ABC doesn't create new resources, but it's enable these books to be shared. So let's see. They're creating capacity in these countries. So look, where is it? There it is. So take the South African Library for the Blind. It has on their website that it's helping people get books through ABC, so I can't go the entire way through because I'm not a member there, but you can go through a few of their forms and see how close I can get. It's sending me to ABC, it's helping me connect some of the direct links to ABC, and then go back the other way from ABC to the point where I need a password. But you can see how you can get access. Also, they're offering discount access to Bookshare, which is this database I'll chat about in a moment. Similar to the DAISY Forum of India. DAISY is a form of reading books in accessible format. So not DAISY, the flower name. It's just that's why they call it DAISY. But they have a large collection of books in Hindi, Tamil, and a bunch of other Indian languages. Of course, in English. Now, that's significant because people in India can read that. But how about Tamil? Is there anyone in Australia that speaks Tamil? One of my first co-authors in this area, Dylan, he's Tamil. I did a legal prac here. One of the ladies who, unfortunately for her, because we were quite loud, shared our room. She spoke Tamil. So if they knew that those two were blind, but if they would struggle getting books in Tamil in Australia. But ABC, click, 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 get a book from India. So she can now, if they were vision impaired, they could get books. Okay, so let's look at the examples of other languages from the south, from the north. Well, Spain has this interesting history with its colonies, but it's always been, so it doesn't actually work with any of them at the moment that I can find out, and well, my colleague who speaks Spanish looked at it, not me because I don't speak it in English. But there's numerous public, and it's unfortunate because it's really well resourced. But anyway, that'll probably change. Because the American Spanish people are trying to get them to join because they want access, and America has a much better relationship with Spain. But in the Global South, Argentina has members of ABC, Mexico, Venezuela, Uruguay. Okay, so they have access to no books from Spain, but what about America? Well, who's been to California, looked around and gone, that's very Mexican? It's because it used to be Mexico, of course. So a lot of Spanish-speaking people in the US, down around the border particularly, and there's also a lot of books published in Spanish in accessible formats. So there's thousands of books in Spanish in Bookshare. Bookshare shares them with the Global South. So, Bookshare, I've mentioned them a few times and flagged I'll talk about them. Instead, I did actually ask the person running this if I ran out of time just to start throwing paper at me. So if you see that, she's not abusing me, she's letting me know. Now Bookshare, it's a major provider in globally, it's huge. I've written about it. It was my first, one of my first articles. I was dumbfounded by how good it was. It only had 50,000 books back then, which, considering the numbers of books in the world, was a small drop. But it's probably why I focused on US a lot more in my research even now, why I'm on a Fulbright, why I work with people at Harvard and Syracuse, was back in the day, you could get law books in accessible format from Bookshare. So back then I could get, click, click, click. It was easier to get access to US anti-discrimination law books than it was in Australia for my undergrad. So I had some really weird looking papers trying to, constitutional law was good because of the connection, but and theory, so that's why my top, and admin law, that's only because anyway. But there was like this really weird way I operated because I could get those materials. So Bookshare gets a lot of resources scanned from the old school Google. Also has a lot of licenses where publishers will agree to give books. So Oxford, Cambridge. I was really happy. One of my co-authors. So one of my heroes when I started UQ, his book I could download it. It was weird because I found that exciting. Both that I could find it and that I found it exciting is probably both weird. But I read it and it was it's like it was really liberating. Okay, so for the Global South, well, I could probably get my mate to give me a copy. But Bookshare, we're the publishers who give their books, like hundreds of thousands of books. Bookshare's got over 500,000 books. Where are they letting them be shared internationally? Initially, they were, if the country's poor and there's no market. So interestingly, Australia had less books available in India, Afghanistan, Zimbabwe, because they figured that there's not, India had, where's the market? Pakistan, well, there's not a market there. Australia, probably a market there. We want you to buy books. With the Marrakesh, this has increased it. There's less and less barriers to those sharing. But this is all great, but let's go back to ABC. That's accessible book and sort of not. Yeah. So, okay, I want to share a book, I'm Bookshare. I want to share a book with someone in Zimbabwe, how do I know? Well, I've got a lot of resources in Bookshare. I've got the capacity to do the investigation. I've got the capacity to have it, the systems in place. I can get the data from them, I can check it, I have protocols in place. I'm pretty robust in checking. Now, what about though, someone wanting to share something from, say, Fiji to Tonga? How well resourced are they? Probably not great. Let's think about a US publisher gears up, ready to sue you. Then, what resources do you have there? Very limited. Politically and legally, financially, it's hard. Now, what Bookshare does, it says to Fiji, no, don't share it with Tonga, share it with us. Come to us. We'll take the books, thank you. Okay, what's happened there? If the American publishing industry lobby gets upset, they're going to be suing a major US charity for getting access to books for US children. So the media is going to go, all right, you're suing them, they're allowed to do it by law, and they're giving access, at this point it's just access to Americans. So their lobby point is, do you want to stop access to children with disabilities in America? And of course they go, no, probably not. No. We don't really want to go there, and incidentally, and that because Bookshare's in Silicon Valley and they've got some very deep pockets, not only do they're politically damaging, there's also a lot of money. So they go, no, we'll let that happen. And Bookshare then goes, to Tonga, do you want to join us? Join, here you go. You want access to that book? Go for it, here you go. We'll double check you're legitimate. Again, the publisher tries to sue, but that's part of our charity arm, it's lawful, come sue us. And of course they don't, because they are very careful, and they're also a known entity on top of that. So that's how Bookshare is enabling, it's facilitating ABC, and a lot of the people through ABC are using Bookshare because of that. And Bookshare is very happy because they're increasing their numbers of books for all their members. Now, it's great. And how long do I have? Is that intentional for me?
Yes.
So how long is that?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, which is very timely because I want to wrap up on HathiTrust. Now, why am I wrapping up on HathiTrust? Many of you in this room would know the big Google scanning process, HathiTrust, millions of books. When the Marrakesh Treaty Implementation Act was signed into law, there was about 16 million books. Now we're getting closer to 20 million books. That's fantastic for partner libraries. Most of them are in the US. So there's about 170 universities involved. The Google part of the Google settlement, all those books are available. And initially they were only available to universities, and then they said, well, we want to give them access to our print-disabled students. And the publisher said no, and now they lost. And they're now even post this Marrakesh Treaty Implementation Act, even it's perfectly legal. Also to go internationally. And there's a number of universities around the world that are members, not many in the Global South. There's a couple in Australia. University of Queensland is one. Known the unknowns, go UQ. I'm there now, we've got told to market all the time. GT's not a member, nudge, get involved. But in the Global South, the only one's one in Beirut, American University in Beirut. So there is a great potential here for those books to become available if those universities in the Global South become members. Now it's not free, I don't think, but I'm pretty confident that if a university, say, in South Pacific, when I came across came here and said, we want to join HathiTrust, can you put that in an Australian Research Council grant to get some money, or can we get a funder? Or HathiTrust, will you just let us in for free? There's probably a way around that. The point is, that's millions of books that are now able to be transmitted because of the Marrakesh Treaty. It's enabled this international cooperation, this international sharing. It's a new norm. It's amazingly changing the world. And the books on HathiTrust, not all great scans, not all page numbers, not all descriptions. Problem there? Yes. Fixable? Very. AI is going to be changing that. It can identify page numbers. It can pick out columns when things don't make sense and put it in a format that makes sense. It can do spelling mistakes, explain graphics, draw comparisons. It can do all sorts of things. And if you believe in sci-fi, which I tend to watch a lot of, do lots of other fantastic things too. Run spaceships and who knows. But the point is, all of these things, it's just the transformation has started, and what we see now is one paradigm. It's a shift, but I suspect within the next decade we're going to see another major shift, and open access has been a dream for all of us for a while, and I suspect in the next few years, following these sort of trends, it's going to get even greater. And I'm going to leave on that positive note because I think I'm exceptionally positive for what's coming next. Thank you.